Dear writer, you need to quit. This is the show that helps you know what to quit, what to keep, and what to question. My name is Becca Sine. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach with thousands of hours coaching 6 and 7 figure authors, mid-listers, major award winners, and new authors alike. Because everyone needs to quit something. Anyone can tell you what worked for them. And of course, they say it might not work for you, but they can't tell you why. I can tell you why. Welcome to the QuitCast. Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of the Dear Writer, You Need to Quit cast. And this is the episode where we talk all about what I want you to keep. So this is the keep cast, or the first explanation of what the keep casts will be. When we talk about what to quit, what to keep, and what to question, obviously as a writing coach, I said in the last episode, there are some things that I want you to quit doing. And specifically today, I want to talk a little bit about my background as a coach in the program called the Gallup Clifton Strengths Finder. So when I first started, it was called the Gallup Strengths Finder. It's now called Clifton Strengths. And that's just a little bit of rebranding they did this year to differentiate themselves. And I have been doing this long enough that I vacillate back and forth between saying Strengths Finder, Gallup Strengths, Clifton Strengths, and all the things that it's been called. So I apologize ahead of time. I want to talk specifically about why it's important for writers to understand what they're good at, and specifically to understand the concept of Strengths Finder. Strengths Finder itself is a concept of success measurement. It's a success program. How are you good at what you're good at? And really it started off as an understanding of, if we're good at certain things, is there both a predictability to how we are good at that, how we get better at it, and how you can predict your own success or predict someone else's success. And they realized, Dr. Donald Clifton was the person who did the original research, and he realized that there was, in fact, patterning to the way that we are good at things. And not only that, but there were consistent patterns that were predictable about how people could expect to get better at what they were already good at. And then additionally, they've done some research about development in those areas where we're really good. And the example that I use a lot is one that Gallup doesn't really use anymore. And I'm going to use it here just for illustrative purposes. But just know that this is one that they've moved away from using a little bit, specifically because it gets misapplied. So I'm going to explain first, this is about a discrete skill, but the basic application of this concept of development is something that I've seen happen across my coaching career, which has been almost 13 years. But I use this as one example because I feel like it really explains how this theory is important. So the researchers took 2 groups of young readers. And one group had this average word per minute speed of 90, which is normal, and the other group had an average word per minute speed of 350. So already the 2 groups, one was a relatively normal reading speed, and the other had a natural capacity that was significantly higher, almost 3 times as naturally gifted as the average readers in reading. So both groups were put through this class to improve their words read per minute skills. And the first group, which was the average group, came out going from 90 to 150 words a minute. So that was normal improvement, or what we would consider to be good development, right? But the above average readers with natural ability, their scores went up to almost 3,000 words per minute. That puts them almost in the top 1% of speed readers. And again, this is a discrete skill, so it's not 100% applicable across the board that you'll get so exponentially better with that little amount of work comparatively, right? But the concept holds true in my experience, is that when you're focusing on an area where you already have natural capacity, you're going to get better faster at such a high level with the same amount of time and intention in areas where you already have natural ability than you will in areas where you don't. And that's why, for me, spending time as writers, especially, focusing on the areas where we have the highest capacity to get better faster is a really important thing for us to learn and for us to think about as writers. And so part of the reason that I want to talk so much in this podcast about Strengths Finder, about the Clifton Strengths Assessment, is because when you understand both how you're already naturally wired for success, and then additionally how you can develop and align that success alignment capacity to your highest ability, then you have the ability to get better faster. It helps you understand how you can stand out. It helps you be able to make better decisions about how to spend your time, about what to allow yourself to do, about what your goals are. And so for me, this is the most important thing that I think we can learn as writers. And of course, if you know the Strengths Finder lingo, you know that I have high maximizer. And so I'm always going to be on board with something that's going to give us better results for the same amount of effort than mediocre or average even results for the same amount of effort. Because here's the thing. Think of your favorite writer. Think of the book that you love the most, the one that you would talk about to your friends. What you don't think about when you think about that book is, wow, they were really average at everything. Like they had no weaknesses. There were no weaknesses at all. It was so great. That's not what we talk about. When we talk about our favorite books, we talk about what they were phenomenal at and what they stood out at. That's what's memorable. Being able to stand out is about understanding how to be memorable, how to take that thing that you do better than you do anything else and maximize that to a high capacity. And so what we're going to do in the next couple of minutes in the podcast is I'm going to attempt to explain why it's important for us to think specifically about StrengthsFinder. Because when you have each of these individual talents that you could identify for yourself, then it's important to know which of those talents are grouped together and are similar in the way that the StrengthsFinder delineates it. So the strengths themes themselves, the names of the strengths, are collections of talents that are in strings that Gallup has discovered when these function all together, they make a stronger chord. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to listen to a couple of minutes of a video with a friend of mine who's a writer. His name's Terry Schott, and he writes science fiction, and you can see more about his books in the show notes. But he is very interested in strengths because he has a background in management and sales. And so in delineating how people are different, of course, in the corporate world, Gallup StrengthsFinder is a very popular tool. And so the interest that he has in trying to understand how people are different comes both from this management background, but then also as a writer himself. And he asked really great questions. And so I just want to play a couple minutes of this video that we recorded, and then we'll come right back and we'll discuss a little bit of it. Say strengths are themes, collections of talent, where you have capacity in, like you've noticed, I'm sure, like you have a talent for collecting information, or you have a talent for being the first to raise your hand in class or something like that. Like you have these capacities, and when they gather together, they form chords that are stronger than the talents on their own, than just the string. And so when you have these capacities, these stronger chords, the ropes, you can do more with them. You can develop them quicker. You can get better faster. That's why I call it the Better Faster Academy. So there's a place where you have exponential growth, which is the better, faster, the stronger chords. And then there's a place where it's going to be more difficult. And of course, me, the coach in me, is like, why would you ever want to do things that are too hard for you when you could do things that are so much easier and get better results? So that's kind of the strengths concept. And as Terry knows, there's how many of them?
Well, we were just saying that you and I are just talking. There's 34 of them, right? 34. Yep. You said there's 35 for me because I have an extra special one that makes it special. But yeah, 34.
You have the strength special. You have what we call mega strengths, Terry.
And so my question is, based on that, the original Most people just do their top 5, so they see their top 5. Then you can do the 34. And I've did the 34. My question to you is, how do they all relate? The top 5 obviously are the strongest. Is there a set after that is we can use but not easily? And then is there a set that we never use? How does that break down?
Yeah, so I think of them in buckets, as almost like if you think of the top 5 are the biggest, fattest chords with the most talent, right? And those are the buckets that are the closest to you. It's the most instinctual. That's why we often say with your top strengths, like you have a hard time imagining that people don't have those strengths. Like if I'm a number 1 learner, I have a hard time imagining that there are people out there who don't want to learn things when they could learn things, because it's just so strong. It's a very close bucket. So there are more buckets. The farther the buckets are away from you, the more difficult it is for you to reach for that talent. So I might have a talent I use most of the time, that's just half a step away, and it takes me almost no energy. I don't even need to eat food to do that. And then I have talents like, for me, empathy, where it's in freaking Timbuktu and I have to, like, buy a plane ticket to get there to pick up the empathy and then buy a plane ticket back to use it. So it costs me a lot to try to use that. And then my development capacity in empathy is basically nothing. Like, I don't have a capacity to develop it. So if I want to have the talent of showing sympathy, for instance, it has to come from a different place. So I have to
that's
develop
key.
something else.
That's key. A lot of these things do come from a different place. Because, for instance, using empathy, when you first told me that, I thought, wow, that's awesome. She doesn't care about anybody or anything.
No.
This lady probably never cries or does anything, but you do. You're very, I would consider, sensitive person. So then I realize you get that from somewhere else, which where that comes from, but that's a great thing to mention so that people don't despair. Because I would think, when I was looking at my scores and I saw the bottom ones, I thought, oh man, this means I'm going to suck at these kind of things. But it doesn't. A lot of times you're going to get it from other places. You may not be as strong as someone that has the top 5, though.
No, and you can't. So, like, the way I explain it for myself with empathy is, like, because I have high connectedness and the connections between people matter to me.
Yes.
If you are connected to me, you're my friend, then how you feel matters to me a lot. And so I will do a lot to generate sympathy and to feel feelings and emotions. But the benefit of not having empathy is, like, I coach sometimes, 10 and 12 people a day for 10 or 12 hours. And I can go through really difficult experiences with people and not feel their feelings even a little bit, and be done and just be tired from the exhaustion of talking or listening for 12 hours, but not actually collect the emotions the way an empathy person would. So there's even benefits to having strength be low, depending on, what they are. But yeah, there's definitely a difference in how high a capacity you have to develop something. So, like, the talents that a high empathy person would have, especially as a writer, I'm not going to have those. And me trying to generate that capacity in myself is going to take way more time and energy than it's worth, when I could instead strategically change my, desire to do that thing. And so that's a big piece of why we talk about this first, is to say, like, you have closer buckets. Reach for the closer buckets first. Develop the closer buckets first. It seems like crazy for people to not try to weakness fix, because we're so into weakness fixing. We're so afraid to have flaws, but really it's our flaws and our strengths that make us, just like fictional characters, right? Like, it's your flaws that make you a cool person and interesting. But
and increasing a strong trait. I learned this dealing with people. Increasing a strong trait by 0.5% is way more effective than increasing a weak strength by 50%.
Yes.
It makes no sense.
Not only more effective, but more efficient, right?
Much more efficient. So
extremely more efficient. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thanks so much, Terry. And I just want to point out a couple of the things that we talked about in that video that are really important to understanding this concept of alignment when it comes to writers. So the first part is that it's more efficient to work on strengths. And this is the concept of better, faster development, right? So where you have a higher capacity, you're going to get better results out of focusing on places where you're already naturally strong. Remember when we talked about the readers and how one group went from 90 to 150 and the other one went from 350 to 3,000. That level of exponential growth, and again, it's one discrete example, it's not meant to be predictive, but that kind of exponential growth that you have in a high capacity area is fairly consistent. Like I've seen it happen in development across skills. And so that's one thing I just want to point out is as a writer, it's really important to understand what you're good at. And if you don't want to take the StrengthsFinder test, because it does cost money, there's no reliable free version of this test because of how precise the instrument is. But if you're not interested in taking the StrengthsFinder, then there are other ways to figure out what you're good at. I mean, I, of course, am a proponent of just take the StrengthsFinder test and come and take the, Strengths for Writers coaching and all that kind of stuff, but not everybody can afford that, and that's why you're here. So what we're going to do in subsequent episodes of the QuitCast is I'm going to go through the strengths one at a time and talk about them a little bit from a coach's perspective about how writers can increase their capacity in each one of these arenas. And we're going to have some interviews with really great writers who have that strength, who use the strength in order to be good at what they do. And we're going to illustrate that and then also talk a little bit about both what you can expect and then the development piece. And so that's all coming in future episodes of this, the QuitCast. The second piece that's really important from that video clip for me is understanding that there are multiple places where a good trait can come from. So there are several traits that strengths share, for instance. And just because you have high communication, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the world's greatest writer. Communication is one of the strength themes. And so I just wanted to highlight that thing that Terry had pointed out, which is that strengths behaviors or strong behaviors can come from a lot of different places, a lot of different strengths, and a lot of different personalities can cause the same thing to happen just for different reasons. And that's why at the beginning of this podcast, our intro talks about, I can tell you why. I can help you to understand where these things come from so that when you know where it comes from, you can develop that capacity, get better at it, and utilize it to stand out. And this is a big part of alignment for me, which is why I want to talk in the QuitCasts a lot about how we are strong and how we can maximize where we're strong as writers. And again, remembering that idea of who my favorite writer is and what makes me want to talk about a book. How do I stand out? It's possible that some of us are going to stand out because we're super fast writers and we can produce good stories really quickly. Some of us are going to stand out because we're really deep thinkers. Some of us are going to stand out because we have amazing ideas. Some of us are going to stand out because our prose is phenomenal. And some of us have multiples of these talents. So what I want to do over the next several months, hopefully, of the QuitCast, and I have an outline to go ahead and go through all 34 of the strengths for writers. I want to talk about these and how we can utilize them as writers to stand out and how we can utilize them to get better, faster at what we do. Because I know the feeling of not only because I feel it myself, but because I see it over and over and over again in the thousands of people that I have coached. We want to be good. We want to have a career. We want to do this well. And one of the ways to do that, and again, it's not the only way, like I said in the last podcast, there's no such thing as 100% foolproof system, right? But one of the ways to help this happen is to understand the ways in which you are good, that you can get out of your way, that you can start developing that concept in yourself, that strength, to get better, faster at what you do. The other piece of that, of course, is that there are some things that we do that we're strong at, that because other people are not strong at them, they don't understand how we think. There will be several examples of this coming up in future podcasts, but I want to underline this because that's another reason that I say what to keep, is because a lot of us have been told to stop doing things that we do because we're good at them, just because other people don't have that capacity and they want us to be more like them. But the key for me, and this, you'll hear me say this all the time, we are all so different that the way you are strong is not going to make sense to someone who doesn't have that strength. And that's why I want you to come here and talk about these strengths with me. Come to the Patreon. We're going to talk about all kinds of different better, faster stuff and the QuitCast stuff there. But I want you to really understand for yourself how you can know. How can you be a better decision maker? How do you understand what to keep, what to quit, and what to question? So as we go forward, I hope that this information will be helpful to you. I hope it will allay some of your fears. I hope it will help you feel like the path that you're on is the right path. And if it isn't, that you'll get on a different path, that you'll start to keep the stuff you need to keep, quit the stuff you need to quit, and question every premise, which, of course, is going to be the next episode of the QuitCast. So thank you so much for being in episode 2 with me. Thank you for talking and listening about what to keep. And I hope that this was helpful. Please like, please follow, please subscribe, please comment. Come find me on Patreon. Come and look at the website. I hope that you'll continue to learn about this, and I hope it'll be helpful for you. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you in the next QuitCast.